For centuries, farmers have been at the heart of innovation. Today, we have 3 innovative farmers who are going to be at the heart of the next decisions that we make in agriculture by inspiring you all here today with solutions, challenges, and pain points that are going on in the agricultural industry. We'll introduce our farmers going from right to left, my right to left. On our far right, we have Verna Kragnes, a farmer in Moorhead, Minnesota, who specializes in organic farming and connecting new Americans to agricultural production. In the middle, we have Courtney, a farmer near Oaks, North Dakota. His family is also proud to be one of the, 12 people of Guelph, North Dakota, keeping the small towns alive every single day. And David Gorder, here on our far left, he is a farmer near Grand Forks, North Dakota, and runs a small business on the side as well. Thanks for having us here today. Let's go ahead and get started with where we're at today and maybe a little bit of an introduction of yourselves. So as you're introducing yourselves and your operation, maybe talk a little bit about how you've interacted with autonomy in the past or new technologies in general. Verna, let's go ahead and start with you.
Hello, everybody. So the experience I have with autonomy is growing in that right now we have a greenhouse that's being updated to be totally autonomous in terms of heating and cooling, and will be powered by solar panels that are on a fence, which will protect both the tunnels on our farm and crops from the wind, which is increasingly a problem for a specialty crop producer. Other than that, tiny things like cooling systems that respond automatically to temperature changes. That's about it in terms of what we do. I think there are multiple ways that the small-scale producer could really benefit from having additional innovations, but it requires a different approach because we are looking at sometimes 50 or 60 different crops that we might be managing, and some of those planted multiple times in a year. And so that creates something where you have to step back and use a different analysis as to what could be the useful tool to help bring that would support this kind of farming.
Yeah, as Stetson said, Courtney. Our farm's about 75 miles southwest of here, and that was stated earlier. I think Andrew said little old Fargo. No. It's big time here. I think our closest city is we got 6 people there in Guelph, so that covers it. We're a centennial farm. Our farm was established in 1907, so the definition of sustainability, I guess, means a lot to different people, and finding businesses that have been around for over 100 years, I think, is something that we're really proud of, and we've been able to integrate technology, whether it comes from the horse and as things move up. And on our farm, we try to look at those things that might be coming in, and Darcy had a great presentation on making sure things are functional and not having to change the whole farm over at one time, how you can gently integrate that into the system, and those are spots that we're trying to find on our farm. You look at labor force during like fall harvest and things, I'd say 60 to 70% of the help that we get in the fall, their main title is retired, and they're fortunate enough to come help us and get things going. And when you get that category, sometimes all these buttons you can push and these gadgets you have and things in the tractors that we have might be a little bit nerve-wracking for these guys, but usually our disclaimer is you can push any button you want on there, just don't push the big red X or the delete, and I can usually fix it. And what FaceTime has done on our farm with monitors is pretty incredible, where we can keep things going. And integrating ag technology, and I don't know how many cattlemen have known about AI a lot more than the current AI, and there's only probably a few people that might get that joke. That's changing a lot. From our farm, 20 miles to the west of us, they're building a huge data center, which is great. You know, maybe that might store some of our farm data. I mean, it's 300,000 square foot building. It's going to hold 46,000 GPUs. It's a multi-billion-dollar building out in the middle of nowhere, 20 miles from our farm. So we're getting to see that, and how all AI is getting tied into these farms is pretty incredible. And I was visiting with a group here last night at supper, and we brought up 4-H, and they're from California, and I didn't realize that through 4-H too, they're now offering computer science and basically all your programming and things like that your kids can do for 4-H. And when us as farmers think of 4-H, we think of showing cattle or having your projects to bring to the local county and show that. But you can see where that's already getting tied in. Maybe your son or daughter doesn't want to come back to the farm, but these groups, or a lot of you guys I'm sure would love to have people that can come in that have the agricultural background, but maybe don't quite want to go back to the farm. So when you're tying stuff like that in with 4-H, I think that's a big deal. So there's a potential there. It's just how to gently integrate it into your farm.
Yeah, I'm David Gorder. I'm the son-in-law on a farm, so take that with a grain of salt. But we farm up in Grand Forks, North Dakota, down to the Trail County, Grand Forks County line. We do sugar beets, corn, soybeans, dry edible beans, just done canola the last couple of years. Spring wheat, so we have a diverse operation. As far as autonomy in our farm so far, we retrofitted 2 John Deere DB88 planters with precision planting about 6 years ago. And what that does is if you tell that planter where you want the seed, it's got individual hydraulic cylinders on each row that are going to put that seed exactly where you want it instead of having to manually adjust it. So that's just kind of a taste of the retrofitting side of autonomy that's made our farm better. I mean, that's helping us get that seed right into moisture, as shallow as possible, but into moisture to help emergence. Those little things help with overall getting the crop out of the ground, and that's what you're always weighing is your operational efficiency versus your cost of production when it comes to adopting new technology. We'd all wish we could have the latest and greatest of everything, but you have to weigh that decision with every purchase that you make. You could feasibly go start farming right now and buy a 6-row press drill and a John Deere 4440 tractor for an investment of about $30,000, but you have a tight window to get a crop in. So you're taking a lot of risk operationally on if you can get that crop in a tight spring window. On the flip side, you go buy a new, Case Quad Track 715 for about $1 million and a, 2000 series Case planter, row crop planter for another $400,000, and you plant that crop pretty fast. But could you pay your bills at the end of the year with that operational cost that increases? So that's what you have to weigh. How is that autonomy going to come in and solve a labor issue or make your operation more efficient, help your yield at the end of the year while offsetting the cost of implementing that technology?
Exactly. The first topic I really want to get into is how autonomy can help us save on either labor costs or reduce the need for physical labor as much as we get. Verna, your operation is probably the most involved with physical labor. What would autonomy mean for your farmers and your operation in terms of easing workload for folks, or maybe even eliminating the need for as many people?
Well, it could be helpful, but also appropriate cultural practices affect things as well. And so as you work toward developing an organic system that's more self-sustaining, you are reducing your labor out of the choices in cover crops that you make and in the sequence of planting. But that said, the most difficult areas for additional labor would be in the harvesting, washing and packing of products, and also weed control, which there are a lot of mechanisms, but from what I have researched, they're out of the price range of certainly the immigrant refugee farmer that I'm trying to help promote. So basically, the issue of autonomy there is a bit of a stretch, and it might actually come down to strategic tools that are very ergonomic in terms of reducing strain on the body and things like that. I guess finally, and I've mentioned this in other panel presentations, that the task of actually hauling things out of the field in a heavy crate to the pack wash area, something there that would be really cool would be to have a vehicle that is able to handle that without a driver.
So if you're listening in the audience, a potential customer, if you've got a solution to help that. Drew, on your farm, what do you see as kind of the barrier to autonomy? Verna touched a little bit on it. What is your guys' barrier to autonomy?
Just finding the right spot to integrate it, and these are huge points. Farmers are all about numbers and time. Time is our number one thing that we have to spend, and the dollars that it costs to integrate some of this stuff would be the barrier. Is it going to be efficient enough to make it work? Everybody likes running stuff from their phone, understanding how it works, and can always see it. If you're integrated with cameras and you can see your tractor going across the field, that might help. But the cost barrier is a big thing. It's got to be economical on your farm, and with a lot of these things that are tied in, maybe we could get a little bit smaller equipment if you can run 24/7, which will help some things. But I think the time and the dollar factor, the two biggest things on getting it integrated into the farm.
I guess maybe a show of hands for the panel. Do you think that cost is going to continue to be a big problem for entering into new technologies as a whole over the next 5 to 10 years? All three of you would agree?
Yeah, I would say for sure. And then another thing too is the way that a lot of this stuff's getting integrated is subscriptions and fees and a per acre base. So I don't even want to add up how many dollars a month we spend on X kind of subscriptions that we have going on to try to make the workflow go. That's another thing that we got to keep at top of mind when we're looking at our books.
Now, David, you entered into a family farm operation as the son-in-law, as you like to say and you like to mention. When you brought in, your new ideas, how were those met with some of those traditional kind of farming values where every seed is planted by a farmer manually, right? How was that conversation coming in?
Honestly, my father-in-law and the whole family's pretty progressive, I'd say, and aggressive. It's a really forward-thinking operation, I would say. So it really wasn't contentious and me coming in with, let's have drones fly and spray our crops, things like that. It's been pretty collaborative and good. I think even that precision planting idea that I mentioned earlier with Delta Force, that was his idea. Yeah, it was a way. We were looking at high-speed planters and pricing those out, and they weren't making them at the same size as what we already had. The DB88 was a wider planter, so that was an option to retrofit it to make it high speed, give it that precision technology, also utilize the hardware that we already had. So no, I think it sometimes boils down to is it his idea or my idea, with adoption. But no, we're always looking for ways to improve, to make things more efficient, to make things more convenient sometimes, and just to make the farm better.
Yeah. Drew, we'll come back to you with another question. Why would a farmer want an autonomous solution? Break it down for us.
So you can see, state of North Dakota, I believe, has 3,500 H-2A visa workers that come in. I believe it's over like 700,000 across the country. So the labor is a big factor, and like I said earlier, a lot of our help is retired help that we're fortunate to have. So that being able to run some of this stuff 24 hours a day, but it'll take a trust factor for every farmer to believe that the seed's being planted at the right depth, and like you hear from the agronomists and the people, the best switch on those tractors when you're going is that door handle to get outside and go check what's going on, making sure that part of the equipment isn't broken, that something's not dragging behind, that you're not having issues that you can't see. So that the trust factor for a farmer is going to be the biggest thing. I mean, you can always pull out your phone and look at it. Yep, it's going back and forth, and see the cameras. But that we do a lot of what you call them, pickup checks, I guess. If you're driving by a field and somebody's planting, you whip out with a pickup and you drive behind, and something the operator might not see behind that's going on that you might catch that he doesn't see. So just being able to understand and trust any of this equipment is going to be the biggest barrier, one of the bigger barriers to get all this stuff implemented. But I think the potential is huge that we can really use some of these things in the operation.
Verna, I want to come back to you with what you had mentioned at the end of your last remark. Really, the transportation of goods from any sort of a field to a storage facility or a processing facility is really becoming quite a process. You know, where do you see autonomy going in terms of improving those types of logistics?
Well, it's complicated because in terms of the situation of our particular farm, we're trying to market contrary to the global market that a commodity producer would have by looking at extremely local. And so that adds a complexity as well to the transportation. So I think it's more how do you get it from the field to the pack shed rather than intervening in much of the rest of the system. So I think that's one thing. Something that you were saying prompted two other thoughts, though, that I might just throw in. One is that the reason I was interested in the autonomous greenhouse is that very much consistent with the statistics anyway, that 2 or 6% of the farms in this country, someone's got an off-farm job in order to make the farm viable. And it certainly is the true with specialty crop producers. And so if you're trying to manage a greenhouse and all of a sudden you have a spike in heat that the weatherman didn't let you know about, and you've got all your bedding plants for the season, frying in the greenhouse, it's hard to get away from work to go and open it up. And so having an autonomous situation there for ventilation is something that actually allows, it might be the one strategic investment to set things up that way for a specialty crop producer in terms of the safety net that it would provide for being able to have that job and then do their passion of farming as well. So, and then in terms of trust factor, I can't see people out there because of the lights. So what's the point of raising the hand? But if I ask you to raise your hand, how many farmers have got out into the field to walk around to try to figure out what it is that really is the problem here, and then have gotten an answer, like a little whisper, oh, I should try this. Raise your hand. Is anybody raising their hand? Can anybody see? Okay, all right. So that trust comes, you can't ever automate that, and to the degree that that's got to be the barrier that we don't cross, is you have to still recognize that it's the human being walking in their fields, listening for that inspiration. That's got to stay in charge. And if we lose that, then the rest of it could go galloping down the freeway and not really address the needs that nature will increasingly require of us as we face the climate changes that are unfolding around us.
Yeah, keep farmers and farming is, I think, how we can best summarize that. And that's a really, really strong sentiment. David, one last topic I want to make sure we touch on is really the need that farmers would have for something like for an autonomous solution, right? Obviously, there's needs economically, there's needs in efficiency, but also there's a need to still be a human being outside of your normal 9 to 5 farming job, which farming is way more than a 9 to 5. It's almost a 24/7 some weeks of the year. You know, what would it look like if a farmer could spend more time with his family? What could the benefits be from that?
Yeah, a couple of things, and Verna's point about transportation is number one. I think that's the most immediate need, and I think we're probably closest to that for autonomy, helping that in that the actual physical transportation, on-road hauling might be the last thing to happen, but what you could do is if you could put autonomous technology in a grain cart, that could, help come alongside the combine and fill up, take that grain cart operator and put him in a truck, him or her in a truck, and take that to town. That would be probably one of the most logical investments right now to get that crop moving. The other thing, as far as quality of life, and just overall what will drive this, well, consumer demand is a big thing for farmers on making decisions on what they're going to grow. Ultimately, it's food companies that get consumer demand that then tell you what needs to be grown, and that's going to continue to change. And you look at some of this technology, like autonomous mechanical weeders and things like that, where if you had something like that could run nearly 24 hours a day and just continue to pick away at crops, that could change your chemical plan. So that if you're farming X amount of acres, it's not feasible to have X amount of chemical plans if you're already running, conventional crops, Roundup ready crops. It's a hard change to make in investing in that technology. But ultimately, with what's happening in the world and with food and what consumers want, autonomy could be a big change with these two things changing together. Now it's like, okay, well, if I can't spray my crop with Roundup anymore, we got to make a decision. It's a good time to evaluate some of these things, like going to mechanical weeding. And an interesting thing, I have a good friend of mine, he's an organic farmer, and he's really correlated his success as far as yield to the number of passes he makes on his farm. They're very aggressive for tillage. They have to be for weed control. And so an operation like that, if he could have autonomous vehicles running simultaneously, he's going to get the required amount of passes over his field to get a good crop. So that would be huge for an operation like him. So there's got to be versatility. Autonomous is almost becoming too broad of a term because you're talking transportation, you're talking about grain carts, you talk about planters, seed and spray technology. It's going to enter the conversation at every process of farming. And so it's logically, I think it's going to start with more of an incremental aftermarket product that's going to take your tractor and take you out of the cab essentially. Because really, as operators of a tractor right now, you're just monitoring things. It's funny when you bring a kid in the tractor and the number one rule is don't touch the steering wheel. it's like we're driving this, but don't touch the steering wheel. And so there's really, the technology's there. Yeah, and it's just going to continue to get more sophisticated, and then it's the regulation side of when can you actually take a human person out of that, for safety's sake.
Yeah, we have time for probably one more round of questions each, and we probably should answer the question which is on our screen here, and that is, do farmers want an autonomous farm? I'll let Drew go ahead and start with that.
I think any place that we can increase efficiency, which usually boils down to your efficiency, and then that's more dollars in your pocket. Sure, that'll work fine. Different spots. Maybe it's not kind of on your last question too on the autonomy thing on our farm. I think like weather. You're talking 75% of your dollars that you make up are in what Mother Nature brings you for the season. And we can land somebody on the moon 50 years ago, but can't tell us the weather's going to be in 2 hours. So I would say wouldn't be a huge thing on our farm. But autonomy-wise, yeah, they're basically doing it themselves already. All you need is about a 50-pound block to sit on the seat, and you could bail out of that tractor, and it'll go around and do its thing. You just need to get back in to hit the brakes. But it it's there, the technology's there, and I think the slow integration would be just right for a lot of farms. And whether you're at 200 acres or 20,000 acres, I think there's just little bits that everybody's going to be able to bring in. You know, if you got a 9-to-5 job in town and you got to figure out when your vacation days are, maybe you can monitor your fields a little bit better when you don't have time out there in the sun shining with pests and using a drone, or you got large acreages doing kind of similar things. There's certain amounts I think you can slide in on each farm, just having the open mind to give it a try, and as long as you guys develop things that are affordable, I think everybody's willing to give it a shot.
Verna?
I just don't think you're going to find someone saying, I want an autonomous farm. Does that mean they might not adopt tactics? But I mean, why would someone want to choose a 24/7 lifestyle except that there's some other motivation? And so that motivation is what drives them to farm and to stay in farming. And so you're not, in terms of insights about advertising, you're not going to probably succeed by saying that that's the goal. It has to be remembered as a tool to help support what people really want to do, which is a quality of life, which is a mission to fulfill their own soul destiny. I'm a farmer, I'm a steward, I care for the land, I'm living in the footprints of my family and the legacy we've had with our farm. Those are the things that motivate people to stay in that task and in that role.
Yeah. David?
I think every farm has challenges with labor and seasonality. I think just about every farm would like the help so that they can right size their operation with using autonomy as a tool to help solve that. I worked for a farmer in central North Dakota. In the township he lived in, there was 11 people total, and I think they were all over the age of 60. And so just about every farmer out there was a 1 or 2 person operation, and everything they bought, every implement they had a rear hitch, and you'd go down the road, you'd hook up your tractor to your implement, to your anhydrous or seed tank, and then you'd have your pickup on the back. And farmers out there treated their wives really well because that was their ride all the time. So if they made them mad, they didn't have a ride to go get their equipment. So that's a serious challenge. And your alternative, if you don't have a solution to labor, and the H2A program's been great in areas like that, but if you don't have a solution to labor that's viable, you're just going to have operations continue to getting larger. When people like that retire, it'll be larger operations that increase your acreage and taking on a lot more risk. And I don't think that's better for the overall agricultural economy. You need to be able to have operations that can right size and not have to continue to increase acreage every year to make farming viable. And I think addressing that labor issue is a big part of it. And I think autonomous technology is what's going to do that.
All right. Well, thank you to you three. We have run out of time, as indicated by my blinking light here at our feet. But I really applaud you all for coming out here today, sharing your thoughts and concerns, and hopefully you get to catch some of our attendees out here and they can ask you some questions that they maybe have for you. But let's go ahead and give our farmers a big round of applause.